Hi, guys. It's Sarah. I'm back with an amazing guest. Been so excited to interview this guy. Darrin, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for having me. Definitely so excited that you connected with me. You are a fellow top tier TC, and I love always connecting with, my fellow colleagues and just kind of talking about our business ventures and what we're doing to kind of just help us create a world of real estate and just really anything else that people have a passion for. So,
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, you actually answered one of my first questions. I was going to ask you if you were also in top tier TC or if you're just Gator or all three, sub two as well.
yeah. So yes, I would tell you I am like a serial mentorship individual. So I definitely started my journey in sub two. From sub two, I jumped into Gator. And then shortly after Gator, I jumped into top tier TC. So,
I love it.
and on top of that, I am in other mentorship. So I'm in Carl Allen's Deal Maker Wealth Society, also known as Protege. And I'm also part of Bridger Pennington's mentorship called Black Card. So, which is a fund building mentorship, which is also really, really exciting.
Well, what did you call that? Black Heart?
It's Black Card, yeah.
Oh, okay. And what kind of mentorship did you say?
It's for fund managers. So if you're looking to start a fund, meaning like you want to either raise capital for a specific investment thesis, you can join someone like Victor Pennington, and he will help you and guide you through that process of what it takes to become a fund manager.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a tongue twister. And, just give you all the guidance from capital raising to legal docs to just being able to present or even curate your investment thesis. It's a great mentorship with just really high level, smart individuals that are doing some really, really cool things out in this world. So
That sounds awesome. So it sounds like all of those worlds tie together. So you're probably like a master like connector, right? Connecting everybody to what they need.
yeah, I mean, I would say connecting is probably my least strong skill, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
I'm more of a numbers geek. I prefer looking at numbers. I'm also essentially a Gator leader within Pace Morby's community. And if you're not sure what the World Gator is, it's essentially being a private money lender, whether that's around earnest money deposits, EMDs, or just being able to do gap lending, bridge lending, but bringing some of your own capital to real estate investments. But I am a leader in there, and one of the Zooms that I lead 3 days a week is called Basic Underwriting. And so for us, it's an opportunity for us to kind of geek out a little bit around numbers in real estate and how we underwrite deals. But like full transparency, we underwrite not just the deal, but we underwrite borrowers, title companies, the actual capacity of that deal to have an exit strategy, right? Whether it's fix and flip, a bird project, any exit strategy, really short-term rental. So me and my team, we love to just kind of work off spreadsheets, numbers, use free tools and things like that, or calculators we've built out right on our own just to evaluate, what a deal can do or not do kind of situation. So it's just super fun.
That's so cool. Okay, so I have lots of questions about what you're into, but let's back it up for a second and tell everybody who you are and how you got to where you are now. Like, could you give us a Cliff's Notes on your history? And you've accomplished so much for a relatively young guy, and I think it'll be really inspiring for others to hear.
Yeah. So I would tell you my looks are deceiving. I wish I would tell you I'm a young guy. Next year I hit 40. So,
okay, well, still young.
Yeah. So I have accomplished a lot though in my life. Really, since I was able to start working, I started at a really young age, right? So I was having dinner with some friends the other night, and I was talking about just my journey as well, right? And I mean, I started working as young as 15, right? And when you're 15 in high school, you can get essentially what we call like a little work visa, right? So it essentially like has some limitations on how much you can work and the hours you can work, right? Kind of a situation. So it doesn't interfere with schoolwork. But I started super early at 15.
Cool.
I had my first job. For anyone who remembers what linens and things was, I worked the cashier, which is so funny story, numbers, right? I liked playing with numbers even from a young age. And I also did the back like loading dock, right? So I took stuff off the truck and shoved them in the back warehouse and stuff like that. So that was my first job. And I remember, I think at that time I made a whole whopping $7 an hour. And I was like super excited.
Right.
$7 an hour. Now I'm like thinking like $7 an hour.
Right.
That's not a lot.
Back then it went further.
Yeah, it goes a lot. Things are a lot different. But I always had a strong work ethic and really just a passion of figuring out what would be my strong suit, right? And I really always played towards the numbers. And so when I went to college, I wanted to kind of put myself through college a little bit, but I also wanted to save money, right, in the same breath, right? And I wanted to find a creative way of doing that because rent and school tuition was not the cheapest.
Yeah.
And so I started actually a dog sitting business.
Oh.
It started to be kind of just a small thing, right? Where I did local neighborhoods, right? Things I could really jump in a car 5-10 minutes from my house, right? And I could stay there for a weekend or a week. It eventually grew into kind of being more on the luxury side. So I was inside of some gated communities with high income earners, where it became a really sweet gig because I was charging anywhere from, $100 a day to 150.
Yeah.
And I was, getting fed, and pretty much I just had to walk their dogs a couple times a day.
Awesome.
Water their plants, check their mail, pick up their newspaper, right? And just make sure their house was safe, right?
Yeah.
And it covered, my living expenses for the most part, but I also had a place to stay during my college days, which was also really nice. So I had a sense of independence, but I also got paid to have my independence, right? So that was really cool. As I was finishing up kind of my college career, I unfortunately had an accident. One of my night jobs, or what we call side hustles today, was doing some valet work. During this valet work, I actually got hit by a car.
Crap.
I broke my leg, and I actually still have all the hardware in my leg as of today, but I had 9 months of 9 months of physical therapy, 2 surgeries, in which, because I was somewhat bedridden after the accident, I didn't have a lot of ability to be independent, and I didn't know how to make money. So what I actually ended up doing was turning to the owners of the physical therapy practice, and I said, hey, I come see you guys 2-3 times a week. Would you be open to employing me? Because I'm already coming here 2-3 times a week.
You are
a hustler. I didn't have to find another ride because I was already getting a ride there.
Yeah.
And they were very open to it.
Cool.
They joked because it was like 3 months into therapy. And when I asked them, and they're like, dang, this is probably the longest interview I've ever had. I had 3 months to get to know you.
That's awesome.
And I was like, yeah, that was probably my longest interview process ever.
Yeah.
He brought me in, and really my intention was to just work there until college, right, was over, right? Like I just needed a place to work that was stable, wasn't too far from home, things like that. And ultimately, when it came to me graduating, I turned to the owner. I said, hey, like, I'm going to be graduating, and I'm just going to be fully transparent. I'm probably going to have to leave, right, to get a big boy job, right? And he didn't want that to happen. So he said, well, what would you ideally like? And so I gave him my number, and he said, cool, I'll keep you here for that number, right? And I was like, awesome.
Ooh, nice.
So I ended up actually working with him for about, I want to say like 6-7 years.
Wow.
And then one day, one of the other therapists and I went to go meet him at a physical therapy conference in Las Vegas. And on the drive there, I turned to my, the other physical therapist who was helping managing the practice with the owners, said, hey, I have a crazy thought. You and I have been managing this facility for quite some time together. We know each other really well. What do you think about buying this business, right? Like, and I said, I don't really know a lot about buying a business, but like, I'm sure I can figure it out. Like, I know this business really well. I just got to figure out how to buy it.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, we just have to ask. And I said, cool, we'll ask. So after the conference was over, I picked up the phone and I called the owner and I said, hey, this is a really crazy idea. And it's okay if you say no. I won't be offended. But what are your thoughts if I came in and bought this clinic from you? He was like, that would be amazing. I think you have the perfect skill set for it. And in fact, I've been waiting for you to ask me to do this.
Oh my gosh. Was he ready to retire? Is that like the time?
No, so he was actually probably in his mid to late 30s. Just him
Oh,
and his wife
yeah.
actually moved to Reno, Nevada.
Okay.
Um, and so he let me and the other physical therapists run the show. And for quite some time, it was probably 2 or 3 years that we ran it with
Yeah.
him being absentee before we asked to buy it.
Cool.
And it was great. But again, what you don't know, you don't know. And it took us almost, I want to say, a year to actually buy
Yeah.
it. Because we didn't know anything about financing. We didn't know how to get it. Kind of a situation. There was a lot of challenges to figure out with the SBA.
Yeah.
At that time, the SBA probably wasn't as streamlined as it is today.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few things we had to figure out and how to manage it and learn a little bit about just different financials and things like that we had to
Yeah.
gather. But we ended up getting it done, and everyone was super happy with the terms of the deal.
Cool.
And 3 years after that, we acquired another practice, and then probably, during that time frame, after we acquired a second practice, we bought into a franchise business called Stretch Lab, and I opened one during the middle of the pandemic. That was pretty rough.
Oh,
We
yeah.
eventually sold it off.
Was it like a
Probably about
yoga
2 years.
studio or something? Stretch lab?
Yeah, it's actually a one-on-one assisted stretching facility. It is
Cool.
owned and operate. Well, the franchisor is Exponential Fitness, and they own, I want to say, about 8 other franchise brands between like Club Pilates, Pure Barre, Yoga
Oh,
6,
wow.
Rumble. Those are all
And you
a lot
did
of the
this
big.
during COVID when people aren't supposed to be in person, so that must
Yeah,
have been really
right. And
challenging.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, so we put in different safety requirements, help people stay safe, things like that.
Yeah.
And then we actually bought a failing business in Stretch Lab also during COVID. And we also had a successful exit on that one as well as recently this year.
Woohoo!
But about, I
Awesome.
would say in 2021, after we, my business partner and I, after kind of going through COVID and things like that,
Yeah.
we had just kind of this gut-wrenching feeling of needing some additional support to continue to grow.
Mm-hmm.
We were looking essentially to either find an equity partner or sell our business off to a bigger company where we could go and work with them
Oh,
to have a bigger vision. We ended up actually selling off to about a mid-sized private equity firm. And, we had a really good, awesome, successful exit with there. It was an awesome journey. And we ended up being, I want to say, the 35th and 36th clinic they acquired or opened
wow.
in the state of California. And then by the time I left, I want to say we were around 44-ish, give or take maybe 1 or 2 clinics. I don't remember the exact number we were at, but I was somewhere around there. And I helped with kind of some of the transitions of new acquisitions, but also opening up new physical therapy offices in the state of California between San Diego all the way up to Sacramento,
That's
and including
incredible.
another one in Orange County, right?
It just
And
goes
so it was a
back
really
to
cool
Joe.
journey.
Oh, sorry to
Yeah,
cut
it
you.
was a lot of work,
Yeah.
a lot of traveling, things like that. I learned a lot about, private equity, and it was just a lot of work. And so once I had a departure from that company, kind of started, then that's really when I jumped into Pace Morby's world, right? So I wanted to do real estate. And at that time, interest rates were really, so if I had gotten a DSCR loan, I was somewhere around 8-9% on a DSCR loan. And I found a lot of challenges essentially getting properties to cash flow, right? From a long-term rental perspective.
Yeah.
And that's really what I was just trying to do, is find lots of buy and holds. But I just wasn't coming out with anything that worked with
Yeah.
those interest rates. And
Yeah.
so I jumped into Pace's community because of the world of creative finance and being able to buy properties subject to and being able to take on someone's mortgage that has a 2, 3, 4% interest rate.
Yeah.
At that point, a lot more properties would have more free cash flow, right? And I really liked that standpoint. Shortly after that, I want to say 2 or 3 months, I jumped into Gator because I had some capital to deploy potentially,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a little bit more passive. So I learned a lot about that. And then I want to say maybe 4 or 5, 6 months later, once I was starting to deploy some capital, had to figure out all my own paperwork, and I started to learn how to do it. And I started helping out other individuals on handling paperwork. And then, of course, Amazing Molly, came out with a program called Top Tier TC and was like, hey, we show people, we're a creative transaction group, and we help facilitate the escrow process.
Yeah.
And also just help with private money deals and things like that, facilitate paperwork, review, just really the snags that happen in deals, right? I was like, hey, that's kind of like what I already do. I didn't know I was kind of doing transaction coordination work. I was just helping. And
Yeah.
then I said, hey, this would be great. And so naturally I signed up for the program because I knew if I had kind of a top tier TC certification, I had better reputation for my business. And
Yeah.
so I started doing that and I'm loving it. Kind of a situation. So I have my own little TC business, which I've actually now grown into a business acquisition TC business as well. So I can help actually coordinate all the steps within a business transaction
That's awesome.
during the escrow process, which is super cool. And, being part of this community in Sub 2, I've met some amazing friends and now business partners. And so we have a real estate debt fund that we are currently curating right now. That will be a mix of wholesale, fix and flipping, private money, transactional lending, just whatever else we think would fit into kind of the real estate world and how we can continue to help people get some deals done kind of a situation. So we have that piece, but again, even within Sub 2, we launched a private credit debt fund, and my private credit debt fund is really to help navigate through really the SBA transaction part of it. But what we do ultimately is we provide the full capital stack in a business acquisition, meaning if there's a purchase price, working capital, due diligence fees, things like that, we're the only bridge lending product out there that can provide 100% of the capital stack. So this is a product that truthfully can help people get into deals with little to no money down, right? And we are literally like the only product out there that I know where people can go buy a free cash flowing business with really not putting a lot of skin in the game.
Wow.
And then we have about 5 preferred SBA lenders we work with that help refinance out our bridge loan into long-term debt. And so I've been just working insanely hard over the last year and 9 months to really just curate everything that I've been working on and building. But, we're helping people get in business deals, which is really, really exciting to me because they offer a lot higher free cash flow. But we also have an opportunity just to create a whole new world of generational wealth that's outside of real estate, which again, nothing wrong with real estate. I love real estate but I'd also tell you like there's a huge transfer of wealth that's happening right now between baby boomers and new entrepreneurs trying to get in to these businesses, but not really fully understanding how to make that transition from W to employee to a full-time entrepreneur, right? With understanding all those pieces. And so we offer really a white glove service that is, hey, we'll help you with the financing. We'll help you through the whole due diligence process and acquisition. And if you really want us to help you post-transaction, right, we can sit on your board of directors as well and kind of help navigate the direction of the business, for anyone who would like us and using kind of our business expertise. And I think that's it's a really cool, phenomenal opportunity for really anyone who wants to kind of partner with us in the EverVested group. So we're just loving what we're doing. It's been a long journey, but it's really something that I love doing, and it fits right in with what I like to do, which is I am the chief investment officer for EverVested. So really all I do is I look at businesses all day, every day. Like if you were to look at my screen and look at all my tabs,
All the
you would
tabs.
see I have just tons of business deals, out there, kind of a situation that I'm looking at and underwriting kind of a situation. And so
That's so
it's
cool.
just a really fun opportunity. And I'm loving what I'm doing. It's very busy. I probably work right now 60 to 80 hours a week, and I'm trying to find a balance right now because I have a lot going on. But nonetheless, I'm loving what I'm doing.
Wow. Okay. So I have to ask, I know that Pace Morby and Cody Sanchez are friends. Have you spoken with Cody? Because it seems like you could be integral to her program for all these business buyers needing funding.
Yeah. So oddly enough, I have not had a chance to get into Cody's community. I am part of Carl Allen's Deal Maker Wealth Society, and I play a pretty good integral part. I probably take 4 or 5 calls from students from that community and just helping them with their businesses. So like today, I had an individual who needed some help with marketing on a CBD brand. And so I just kind of give them a lot of high level pointers and some small things that wouldn't cost them operationally a ton to market, but they're a little bit more boots on the ground, kind of like feels like door knocking almost, right?
Okay.
But very low overhead cost, more time that it would take. I am working with one of Cody Sanchez's students right now to help get a deal done for him. And he pretty much told me, like, if we get a deal done, don't worry, I'm going to get you into Cody's community and
Like,
plug
yeah,
you and things like that. So we are in a few different other little communities as well that we're working with and offering our product, but we really focus on really high level, communities like Carl Allen's, to be honest, just because I don't want to. A lot of the paperwork and gathering it is very time consuming, and so I need to work with some higher level operators. Not that Cody's doesn't have higher operators, I just
yeah,
haven't had a chance to get into her community.
yeah.
But the small communities, they don't have as high level operators as like the Carl Allens, the Cody Sanchez's, and things like that. And so I just need to figure out how I balance my time. So I've kind of picked Carl's community first and build a strong relationship with Carl directly and his community. And like I said, I kind of just really focus with them and help them along the way. But like I said, if someone from Cody's community reached out to me, I would 100% help them out, right? And
That's
get
great.
things done.
That's great. Okay, so you mentioned white glove support earlier. So let me see if I'm understanding what you offer. Let's just say me for example. If I wanted to buy a business that was cash flowing, would you actually be able to help me pick the right business for me as well?
Mhm.
Right out of the gates, you'd help me find one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have an entire team dedicated to just finding deals or businesses to buy, including myself. So I am part of that team. And so I have a few different websites I use to essentially, scrape data off the internet and find these businesses. I haven't fully automated that, right, through my CRM machine, but eventually we will. It's not as easy to scrape data for businesses as it is for real estate. Real estate you can pull off from the MLS and tons of other websites where you can just, like PropStream, you can easily just go and filter out, right? Low equity deals, drop it into your CRM and start, LOI blasting them out kind of a situation. It's not as easy with businesses. So it's a little bit more manual work, but eventually we'll get to some automation in there. But for the most part, I put in very specific filters into my different websites. And then I just started pulling data off of those. And I just start, manually sending out emails to brokers or sellers and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about your business. And then I ask them for just some really basic financials. We do a quick underwrite on it. And if it debt services really well, then we, can submit an LOI or, we can say just no, even though it's debt services, it's just not really something that really suits my needs. But the white glove service is hand holding all the way through. Like I go on seller calls for people, meet with sellers kind of a situation. So we really truly offer a whole white glove service. We can help you with the LOI process.
Wow.
Once you are under, an LOI, we can help you through the whole due diligence process, right? Which is why I built out my TC business acquisition business, is so that I have kind of that white glove service that says, hey, I have a TC.
Yeah.
We do charge more than the real estate side because there's a lot more work involved,
Yeah.
but we can go and manage pretty much the entire process for you, right?
Wow.
So from getting all the documents we need to the underwriting process, to getting a CPA in place to do quality of earnings, to bringing in an attorney to write your purchase contract, to getting your escrow set up, right? And then all your title searches, lien searches, judgment settlements, all getting run. And then making sure that all the commitments of the purchase contract are fulfilled by all parties, and then moving to closing, as well as we can provide the funding, of course, right? So we literally can do A to Z for you.
Heck yeah.
And then, of course, like I said, we're more than happy to sit on your board of directors to help you kind of oversee and manage the business as well. So
You also,
it is a full white glove service.
that's so amazing. Do you also help people that have businesses? I'm thinking like a lot of the baby boomers, like you mentioned, that maybe want to retire and get out of their business. Do you also help them sell it?
Yeah. So right now, it's not part of our service right now.
Okay.
I would say give me a year and I will probably make it part of my services.
It only makes
I
sense,
just don't
right?
have it right.
Both sides of the coin. No, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so using me as an example again, because I'm actually really interested right now. What do you look for to qualify your customer? If you're getting a business, if you're purchasing a business based on its financials, does the buyer have to have like a certain credit score or a certain amount of, like
That's a wonderful question, Sarah.
about
So because most of our exit lenders are SBAs, right? Preferred lenders of ours, we do follow a lot of the same criteria as an SBA lender, meaning you do need about a 680 credit score. You also need to have a fairly clean background check, meaning no bankruptcies, no convictions, things like that. So you have to have kind of a fairly clean record kind of a situation. And then you might have to fill out a little bit of, what we would call a debt schedule or a personal financial statement, right? Just to understand where you are financially, right? It's much like going through getting a mortgage, right? Just to make sure you have the personal assets to kind of pledge a little bit of collateral against the loan that the SBA does. Now, you don't have to have 100% of, the purchase price, but the SBA might say, hey, we want to see a little bit of collateral or at least some skin in the game or a combination of the two, right? We would have some very similar requirements just so that our exit lender that comes in is going to be 100% confident that they can take out our loan, right? That's always the most important part. So we are, in theory, really true transactional lenders. We're just a little bit more relational on that transaction lending side because we offer so much of a white glove service, where most transactional lenders tell you have to figure all that stuff.
Okay.
Right? That we'll tell you yes or no if we'll end up, or we say, hey, let's help you kind of situations.
Okay, so when you talk about skin in the game with real estate, skin in the game could be 3%, could be 5%, 20%, whatever. What is it with businesses typically?
Yeah, so it's skin in the game because we don't ask for actual liquidity. We might ask, if you have some real estate, or the business has real estate or other assets, we might ask you to pledge those assets just to protect, right?
Okay.
But again, really, like, we do it just from a security standpoint, right? We talk a lot about kind of perfecting our security as a loan, right? And so we go through a pretty rigorous due diligence process to kind of make sure that we do perfect our security, because on the back end, right, like I think I mentioned earlier, was we are a private credit debt fund, right? So where all of our financing comes from is from our investors, right? Because we're using our investors' money to deploy into business acquisitions, we do need to perfect our security of the loan, right? And so we do a lot of underwriting. And in fact, we underwrite a little bit more stringently than the SBA does. So the SBA requires about a 1.5 debt service.
Meaning?
On
can you break
any
that
loan
down
that
real
is. What was that?
Can you break that down real quick before you move on? 1.5 debt
So
service.
debt service is essentially, you can use it with two different numbers. You can do kind of your last year, we can call your adjusted EBITDA, right? Kind of a situation, which is just in case for anyone who doesn't know, your NOI is your net operating expenses. So on the top line of our profit and loss statements, you have your revenues, and then you have to subtract out your cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold might be potentially labor if you're a service-based business. It could also be products or supplies that you need to, sell whatever you're doing, whether it's a product or service, right? And then you get your gross profits. So your gross profits is your revenues minus your cost of goods sold. And then you have your daily expenses. So these are maybe office equipment or office supplies, rent, maybe insurance expenses, maybe interest expenses. Those are all different types of expenses, right? And then you get essentially what we call your net operating income. For your net operating income, though, we actually look at your adjusted EBITDA. Your adjusted EBITDA and your EBITDA, just so you know, is interest before taxes. It's your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
There
right?
you go. Yeah.
And so we add all that stuff back, right, into your bottom line, because they're not always normal operating expenses, right? And so we add that stuff back in, and then we put a multiple on that, right? So to get to your debt service, we essentially take your adjusted EBITDA and we divide it out by your debt service, and then you should get a number, right? So if you get a 1, it pretty much means you break even, right? So between how much you make divided out by your debt service, and if you're at a 1, you're pretty much just breaking even, right?
Okay.
But if you're at a 1.5, you're essentially making 1.5 times what your debt service is, right? Which means you will have free cash flow after debt service, right?
Okay.
Now, I don't know depending on what state the business might be, you might be in a high tax state, you might have no state taxes, right? Or you might be a high income earner, you might not be a high income earner. And so we just have to always recognize that a 1.5 may not actually cover your entire free cash flow, right? Meaning after you pay your debt service, you still need to pay taxes, which is going to be on your NOI,
Sure.
and you still need to have free cash flow. Sometimes a 1.5 doesn't qualify, like is not enough to cover all that after
Depending on
taxes.
what state you're in.
But
Okay.
yeah, depending on what state you're in, you might just break even, right?
Okay.
And that's not going to be fun, right? Like no one wants to buy a job to break even or a business to,
Right.
to break even, right? So when we run our numbers, we actually run closer to about a 1.7 on the long-term debt financing. So when you go into your SBA refi, we want to see pretty close to a 1.7. We'll go down to about a 1.6, but we love to see businesses at a 1.7. So we know that if you buy this business, you're going to have enough free cash flow to still make sure that you can take something out of that business so it makes it worth being an owner. Right.
Love it. Love it. And you actually just answered another question I had because I was a little confused with the private funding versus where the SBA comes into place. But it sounds like you're helping people acquire the business, and then once they have all the stats and documents, then they can go to the SBA and get refied into an SBA loan.
Yep. Yeah. So mechanically, we go through the whole process of actually closing on the deal. We'll issue a bridge loan. And a bridge loan, just for context, right? Bridge loan in its truest nature just means there's a loan that has been put in place, but it's for a short-term finance. Now that can be anywhere from 1 month all the way out to like a year or so, right? They're short-term, and they're short-term knowingly like there is going to be an exit lender that's going to provide long-term debt service, right?
Which is the SBA.
And that's kind of what constitutes a bridge lender, right? And so what we do is we put in short-term debt financing. That debt financing is there to just do the acquisition of the business, but we're also going to be working with SBA to actually take out our bridge loan as essentially like a refinance into long-term debt, right? And so this is how a lot of people are essentially getting in, right, to businesses with little to no money down, is because we're providing the upfront financing and it's just going to refinance.
I love that. That's so amazing. So do you typically help people find businesses that already have operators in place, or are you
that's a
having to
wonderful question.
set
Yeah.
that up?
So we love to find borrowers, we'll call them borrowers and buyers, who have a passion or a unique skill set to own and operate that business, right? So if you were to come to me, Sarah, and you said, hey, I'm an amazing short-term rental operator, right? I am looking to acquire a portfolio of short-term rentals. They're operating as a business. Could you provide financing for me? Because that's my background. And I would say, yeah, we can go ahead and find that, right? This will be essentially an SBA requirement that you have per se a resume or a partner who has a resume to own and operate the business, right?
Okay,
Kind of situation.
good to know.
Or some unique skill sets to qualify you to run a business. The SBA doesn't really like someone to kind of jump ship from their skill set, because they're personally guaranteeing a large part of that loan in event of a default, right? So,
and they're private, right? They're actually not a government.
No, the SBA is a government-backed loan. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Federally
I
government.
heard that it was opposite, so that's good to know. Okay, it is government. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yep. So they're the Small Business Administration, right? The USA Small Business Administration. So, so they essentially guarantee to whoever the lender is a portion of that, right? It reminds me a lot of the VA. Right? The VA says, hey, the VA is going to guarantee some specific amount of that mortgage, right? I want to say it's 25% is what the VA guarantees. And that if in the event of a default, right, then they'll say, hey, we'll come up with the 25%, right, of the situation. And then you're left with the other 75, right? So why some of these loans are advantageous, right, to go SBA. Yeah, they are a little more tedious, right, to go through than conventional lending, but they also have a little bit more security for the loan, right? So that's why, they like to do that kind of situation.
Do you specialize in businesses that are real estate related only, or do you any kind of business?
Any businesses. So, well, let me clarify. We are not business agnostic, but we have very specific business we love to lend on, right?
Like such as?
So obviously I have a real estate background. So home services is always on the top of my list, right? So anything from pest control, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, pool services, things like that. All these types of businesses to some degree have a lot of staying power, right? So in the
Yeah.
event of a recession, right?
Yeah.
God forbid, or um, another global pandemic, right? If someone's AC breaks, right, in Arizona,
Yeah.
well,
It's
guess what? They're
necessity.
still getting that replaced no matter what,
Yeah.
right? Like there's certain industries which that have a lot of staying power. Restoration companies, right?
Yeah.
Pipe breaks, there's a flood, you're gonna have to fix it, right? Or people abandon properties that way, right? Kind
Hmm.
of a situation. But for the most part, people will go out and fix their properties, right? So a
Yeah.
lot of those things are what we quote unquote recession proof, right? When you look at professional services such as like accounting firms, bookkeeping firms, staffing agencies, marketing agencies, right? These are all things that have a lot of staying power regardless of what the economy is doing,
Yeah.
because everyone as a business owner needs to do marketing sales, especially when times are bad. I would tell people ramp up your sales and marketing because that's how you're going to drive your revenue. So those types of businesses have the ability to really stick around kind of a situation and when times are tough, right? And so we love landing on businesses like that. Me personally, I've got amazing business partners with John Hurt and Fergie. We're looking at doing an auto shop roll up, right? And we're looking for those opportunities, right? Where one, they have the ability to just service, right, what the current state of what autos are, right, with gas, right,
Hmm.
and hybrids, but also look at the opportunity to say, hey, can we plug in electrical, right? Because we see this movement, especially in
Yeah.
California.
Yeah.
There's a huge push for electrical vehicles, right?
Yeah.
And so if there's not a huge influx of electrical mechanics, right? Well, that's where our opportunity stands, right?
Yes.
Where we can add a little bit more to these things and start moving towards the times, right? Where a lot of mechanics aren't currently moving and then they're sticking in what they do best. But we're saying, hey, is there an opportunity for us to say, hey, we can do what you do best, but we can also value add, right? Kind
Yeah.
of a situation. So we love really businesses that we can add value to, especially ones truthfully that really are just lacking sales and marketing, because that's really what we're good at is sales and marketing. Taking a business, really putting in our marketing, adding a sales team, and then just driving those top.
Nice. So that's part of the white glove. You actually not only help somebody find the business, purchase the business, but also optimize it.
Yeah, we can help with all of it.
That's so cool. Okay. Fee structure. Do you charge a percentage of the cost of the
Yeah.
business, or
Yeah.
how do you?
So I would tell you we are hard money lenders within the business acquisition space, right? So we're not the cheapest. Full transparency. But
But you get it
with
done.
that being said, you're also getting a free cash flowing business, right? With very little money out of your pocket, right? And
Yeah.
so I relate this a lot. So like, would you be willing to pay $50,000 in fees, to acquire a business that's making six-digit figures, right?
Of course, and then you can write off the fees.
Absolutely, right? We charge anywhere from 10 to 12%,
Mm-hmm.
and we have 1 to 3% interest only payments, right? During the time of our um, loan until it's refinanced. And most of our loans right now are getting refinanced out for about 4 to 6 months, right? Some are getting quicker turnarounds, like in 2.5, but they're smaller deals. The bigger deals, that are million plus might take us about 4 to 6 months. But in general, like if you have a small deal that's between 250 to 500 or like 600, we can usually get those done no less than 3 months, right? Kind of a situation. So it's so your interest only payments aren't really getting up to fast. Really where truthfully we make our money is just on the loan origination. The rest of the fees really go back to our partners or our investors in the.
Okay. Do people ever have a hard time refining out? Does SBA accept everything that you send their way?
Yeah, so thankfully, we have not come across this challenge. One of the reasons why we haven't come across this challenge is because, as I mentioned before, it's about really perfecting security that we're issuing, right, in the loan, right? And so ways that we protect, I think I mentioned we have about 5 different preferred lenders. So the second we like a deal and it goes under LOI,
Mm-hmm.
we start actually working with our SBA lenders
Oh, good.
from the get-go,
So they're
right? So
in the
we go,
mix
hey,
and they're anticipating it coming.
yep. So they already know that we're going to issue a loan and they're going to refinance it out, right?
So cool.
And so we get essentially a term sheet prior to closing that they're going to refinance out our loan, right? And so because of that, and we also, again, we're not putting all our eggs at one lender, we're putting it in kind of multiple lenders. So one lender doesn't perform, we'll already have a backup lender in place to kind of perform on our refinance. So
Nice.
knock on wood, it hasn't happened. But again, part of perfecting that security is if for any reason that we couldn't get an SBA exit lender, the beauty of actually being in lending seat is we can actually restructure or refinance out our own loan into long-term debt until we essentially find an exit on our potential loan. So we have kind of A to Z, like we have our A, which is we get our preferred lender, right?
Best scenarios.
And then Z, the last worst case scenario is we go out and we refinance at our own loan. Now we have a few other strategies around between A and Z of other things that we can do to kind of get our loan refinanced or restructured in kind of a situation. Those pieces though are not the ideal situation. They're things like we can actually go and ourselves take over the business, get that business up and running to the part or situation to where we can get a refi on it. There are things that are more ugly than we really want to do.
Yeah.
So we try to stay away from some of those pieces. But I will tell you, we worked really, really hard in essentially structuring where our loan is very, very secure for our investors, right? And that there is security in what we're doing, kind of a situation, and perfecting the loan. So
that's awesome.
We love our product because of all the security that we really do put into it to protect our investors' capital.
Does your business model apply to people that want to buy an existing franchise?
Yeah. So you could do a franchise. I don't particularly love franchises, even though I owned one. And here's why, right?
The fees.
They do kind of offer a semi-absentee owner model, but they're never fully absentee, even though there is a playbook model to run it.
Okay.
They're more semi-absentee because any business, really, truthfully, you're some more semi-absentee than ever fully absentee, right? Kind of situation.
Yeah.
But you will have things that you cannot do because the franchisor says these are the things you can do and these are the things you 100% can't do, right? And even if you were to say, hey, this is a great idea to increase my revenue, they still may not let you do it.
So it's kind of like real estate. It's nice sometimes to buy a place without an HOA.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right?
Less rules.
Because you get limitations, right? And those limitations can hinder the growth of your business. Yeah. And franchises just, typically have a territory, right?
Yeah.
So your ability to grow and scale, the only real way to grow and scale it is to go and buy another territory, right?
Got it.
And you probably want to buy a territory that's close to your existing territory to get economies of scale. Yeah. But in the same breath, your scalability is going to be limited to your territory and you can't go outside of that, right? Which also poses some challenges. And again, I'm not saying that all franchises are bad because I owned one, right?
As a general rule, though.
Yeah, I would say just realize you will eventually top out to some degree, no matter how much you put into your sales and marketing team. You'll have some limitations in how far you can grow your business.
Okay, that makes sense. And then earlier you mentioned, I think you said like a smaller loan of $250,000 to $600,000. So that made me think about what size of businesses are we talking about? That do you have a sweet spot that you like to purchase businesses with like 10 or less employees, or 50 or 100? Like, at what point are you not interested?
Yeah, I mean, I love businesses that are not one or two operators, right, at any given time, right? And I say that because if one person leaves, right, what do? Right? Like you now got to go fill in their spot, right, as the owner, right?
Right.
Which isn't going to be super fun right now because essentially you're buying a joke, right? So I like to buy businesses that have 5 to 10 people at least, right? So if one person leaves, it's not insanely detrimental, right? Like, yes, some of your other team members might need to pick up the slack for a little bit of time, but chances are you have enough scalability to do that and have some people to pick up the slack, right? But also have a team that can actually hire pretty quickly and get someone in, right? Kind of situation. I like businesses that, again, you can add sales and marketing to it and continue to grow it. Revenue wise, I don't really have a top line revenue requirement or, a free cash flow perspective. I would say if you really we're looking at buying a business, like don't buy a business with less than $100,000 worth of free cash flow. And that's just because you're going to have your debt service, you're going to have your taxes, and you still want to give yourself a decent paycheck, right? Kind of a situation at, $100,000 of free cash flow, hopefully half of that, right, goes to debt service and taxes, and then the other half at least can go to you, right? And at 50,000, you could probably feel okay with it, right? And then you could take that business and scale it, right, and continue to grow from 50 to 75 to 100, whatever that might look like, right?
Gotcha.
We can create those plans during, our due diligence process, right? But ultimately, I would say just don't buy a business that's not making money, right? And I probably wouldn't let you buy a business that doesn't make money.
Right. The underwriting.
But buy businesses with opportunity, right? Like right now, again, in this transfer of wealth, there's tons and tons of businesses that are just absolutely not doing any marketing and zero sales team, right?
Yeah.
They're not even answering phones, right?
Right. Their technology could be ramped up, like Cody Sanchez always says, and then boom, like right
what
there,
can you
30
automate in that business to ramp it?
Yeah.
Like take those businesses that have opportunity, they have free cash flow and opportunity, and run with it, right? Kind of a situation. Those are the businesses, truthfully, that I.
Do you build that into your purchase price of the business? Like if you're like, okay, we know we're going to have to revamp their technology, it's going to cost approximately this much. Do you set the buyer up with everything they need to succeed?
Yeah. So from that standpoint, what I would tell, like if I were to look at a business that, hey, there's free cash flow, debt services, right? But we need to figure out what else we need to add to this. So we actually will build into our loan working capital. Okay. So we usually do about 2 to 3 months of working capital, right, just to sustain the business. But sometimes we'll say, hey, let's add another $25,000 and dedicate that to sales and marketing, right? Kind of a situation. Over the next 2 months, you're going to take about $12,500 each month, and you're going to dump that right into sales marketing, right? Okay. And that's to
you help
digital
allocate
AdWords
the budget
team, right? And it's just a small budget that's dedicated to that stuff to continue to grow your revenues.
Okay. I love it. So mostly your expertise is in purchasing existing businesses with existing operators and their numbers and all that. What about somebody that wants to go out and they have the skill set? Maybe they left a W-2 job with that skill set, but they want to start it from scratch. Do you also fund that type of opportunity?
Yeah. So here's like my 2 cents, right? Would you rather buy a home, right?
Or build one?
Be able to just quickly furnish it and rent it out, or not even furnish it, maybe just throw some paint on it, right? Or in flooring, and then rent it out, right? And start making cash flow in a month.
Yeah.
Or would you rather buy a piece of land and build a whole home on it?
Yeah.
That may take 12 to 24 months before you start making money.
Yeah. Okay. I'm following you. So it's not so much to fund somebody's like dream business. It's more like somebody that's an investor. You're purchasing business to make cash.
And you can still make it your dream business, right? Mm-hmm. But what I would say is like, do you want free cash flow today, or do you want free cash flow 2 years from now?
Right. Okay, cool. Wow. That's cool. I had no idea when we talked the other day that this was what you were into. So I'm so happy that the, conversation turned this way. So to help your business and, a little promotion of Darrin right now, I'm seeing both sides. You probably are open to any other like gators or, just people that have capital that they would like to deploy. And then you're probably also looking for buyers, right? So both ends.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Buyers and capital to deploy are 2 of our biggest things that we might potentially look for at this time. So.
Okay, awesome. And then can you tell everybody again a little bit slower what your company name is and the website and how they can reach out to you?
Yeah, definitely. So we're EverVested Capital. So it's EverVested and then capital. We have 2 websites. So evervestedcapital.com is essentially kind of taking a forward-facing look at what we would consider our like private equity firm, right? Mm-hmm. So how we buy businesses and things like that. And then if you're on the investor side or you're a gator, right, private money lender, you can check us out at EverVested Capital Solutions. And that I won't spell that all the way out, I guess. Maybe
we got it.
In the show notes.
Yeah.
It's really long, but EverVested Capital Solutions is where you can kind of check out on how to be an investor look at what your returns might potentially look like as an investor with us. And of course, if you wanted to reach out to me, you can find me email at EverVested or Darrin, Darrin at EverVestedCapital.com. Actually, I'm sorry, it's EverVested. So
Oh,
EverVestedCap.com, and you can find me there. So
okay, Darrin at EverVestedCap.com. We got it. Okay, that's awesome. And then, we didn't even really touch on the real estate side much, but I know maybe we'll come back and do another interview for that. So another source of, if somebody's a real estate investor or has private capital for that and wants to get involved, Darrin also, as he mentioned in the beginning, is involved in creative financing. He knows how to fund these deals. He knows how to underwrite these deals. He knows how to do his own transaction coordination of these deals. He's got a whole team. So Darrin is your man.
Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, for sure. I appreciate your time as well. Thank you so much for laying it all out. And I can just see you going to the moon with this. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. I appreciate you.
Have a good one.